I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. If you are passionate about professional wrestling and you're never done learning all about it, then you have landed in the exact right place. What are you waiting for? Go ahead and join the Till We Make It tribe. Subscribe right now. If you are an aficionado of Pro Wrestling Championship Belts, then you know the big dog in the conversation is Wildcat Belts from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. They're the ones who make championship title belts for the WWE, NXT, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Dragon Gate, and many, many more. And as luck would have it, their owner, Andrew Lazarchik, happens to be an old friend of mine. And in just a moment, I'm going to be speaking with Andrew, asking questions specifically about the cost of championship title belts. And you're coming along for the ride. Ready?
You and I have known each other for over 25 years, but I think it's been more than 10 since we've seen each other in person.
Yes.
Maybe more than 15.
I think at least 15, yeah.
Wow. So when you and I first met, you were working as a ringside manager at the time in wrestling. You were Hotshot Drew Lazario, and we crossed paths in the black hole of wrestling, Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And that's where we know each other from.
Yes, that's a good term, yeah.
But since then, things have really taken a surprising turn for you because you are Wildcat Belts. And although everybody around the world knows you for championship title belts, this is the thing you are most renowned for. We both started out much more humbly back in the 90s.
Yes.
So going back to when you were not the world-renowned expert about all things championship title belts, what do you remember about the first belt you ever made?
Wow. Well, I used to make them as a kid. My aunt she worked at a local bank here. And if you remember the old dot matrix printers?
Oh, yeah.
The
green and white paper on the back. Yeah.
Yeah. The paper was like on a reel, right? You know what I mean? It folded and perforated every 11 inches. So she used to bring me the leftover dot matrix paper. And when I was 10 years old, if I could find 3 sheets that were still connected, I could draw a belt on those 3 sheets and they would fit around my 11-year-old waist. So I used to draw them nonstop because we had all this, paper sitting around. So we draw them nonstop. But I remember the day, I was always into belts and always into wrestling. But the day I can focus on that was the day I became what they call a belt mark, a fan of belts, was when the Winged Eagle belt debuted, February 5th, 1988, on the main event, Hogan and Andre, the rematch. That was the debut of Hogan. Did an interview pre-tape interview behind the scenes wearing the 86 WWF belt.
Right.
And then when he walked through the curtain, he's got the brand new Winged Eagle belt on it. I'm like, oh my God, what is that? Everybody's worried about Andre and Hogan. And I'm like trying to look at this title belt. And there's a scene at the beginning of the match where everybody thought it was Dave Hebner, but Earl Hebner, that was his evil twin debut, grabs the belt off of him and does the thing. That was the first time I remember a referee holding the title belt up for all to see. This match is for this championship. And they did a close-up of that title. And, we recorded it obviously on VHS.
Right.
And if you remember pausing a VHS video in 1988,
super clear, right?
It would, be doing this, but we try to pause it and, figure out what exactly does it look like? Because, there wasn't a picture of it until like a month later in the magazine.
But the way magazines were back then, 6 months later.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. But yeah, that was when I became a fan of belts and really started getting involved in, making them out of paper and then making them out of, as I got older, my dad was a pharmacist and one of his customers was a roofer, John's Roofing here in Latrobe. And he used to drop off his excess rubber roofing that would go under the shingles. And that looked just like leather. When
it does. Sure.
And he also did siding too. So if you had some extra siding and you sanded it down, it looked silver. So it looked like metal plate. So I got some tin snips and, was able to cut the rubber roofing out and, make, fake, my versions of the WWF and the NWA titles and things like that. So that was kind of how it started in the late 80s, early 90s. And then it grew from there.
Right on. So now let's fast forward a little bit.
Yes.
Can you tell me, I just want to talk about cost, right? This is something I get asked about a lot. Let's go to the extreme far end. What's the most expensive championship title belt you've ever had to make? Do you remember the price?
Wow. Well, there's been some that we've done for some companies where there was a lot of R&D involved, but I don't know that that really counts as like, because when the belt's said and done, once you make another one, it's not going to cost that much. I know I did one. It was for, and forgive me for not knowing the exact name, but is it Dragon Gate?
Sure.
Over in Japan. We did I want to say it's Open the Dream Gate belt, where it literally has a door on it that opens and things like that. And there's a key, there's like a post on it where you hang keys, like the champion gets a key, and then you symbolically unlock the title, and it has the champion's name under it. But that was quite a while ago. We did that. That was quite a while ago. And I want to say that was probably that was more than $5,000.
Wow.
But, it really depends. There's other, see, that kind of is a good question because there's so many variables when you're making a title belt. If you want something three-dimensional that looks sculpted, that, has to be, cut like on a CNC type method. There's so much that goes into that doesn't go into a standard belt.
And let me pause you for a sec. You used a term right there that I don't know. You said CNC method. What is that?
Yes, the letter C, the letter N, the letter C, CNC. It's a machine. It's a machine that has basically a drill bit on it, but it's connected to a computer. I honestly don't know what it stands for, but it's computer something cutting. Computer
Crunchy
something.
nacho chips, I believe. Crunchy nacho chips.
No, but maybe. But anyways, it's basically the cutting machine is connected to a computer, so you can do all kinds of really involved stuff. But the problem with that is when it comes to championship belts, the front end of the what you have to design on the computer, all the programming you have to do is probably going to cost minimum 10 times more than what an average belt costs completed. So there's a lot involved. So it's like there's other belts that we're working on right now that I'm thinking of that the front end alone was $3,000, and that's before we made anything. So it just depends. It just depends. But speaking of a standard belt, like we all know is what the average championship belt looks like. You're looking at between 1,500 and 2,000.
Mm-hmm. But some of the factors that change that. So obviously the thickness of the metal is a big factor,
right,
in the price. How many side plates, right? Like what I think of as a very traditional pro wrestling look. We're talking about 5 plates total, like that main face plate and then the 4 side plates. But there's a lot of options here, right? People that are trying to like get something done on a budget can make certain decisions along the way to reduce their overall cost.
Right.
What do you think is like the number one? Like if somebody comes to you and says, I'm looking for a way to save on a championship title belt, is it jumping down from 5 plates to 3? What is the big price difference?
That's a good starting point. Size, at least the way that we price them out, it's not based on the size of the belt. It's based on how many plates. So like you said, going with a center plate and 2 side plates, that's a good way to do it. The other thing, if I can kind of jump off a different topic there, just while we're talking about it, we think of like you said, a traditional title belt as a center plate and 4 side plates, like you see on WWE, WWF, that kind of thing. However, a lot of times when we're dealing with smaller promotions, you're dealing with smaller guys. Mm-hmm. So if you want the belt to fit around your waist and there's 5 plates and snaps, it's not going to fit around guys' waists. It's just not. And the only way to do that is to make them smaller, and then the belt looks goofy because your side plates are too small and they don't proportionally go with the center plate, or you make the whole thing small and maybe you don't want a small belt. So yeah, that's a good point. Going down to 3 plates is one option. Thickness of the metal, we offer 2 different style thicknesses. The standard thickness is an 1/8 inch thick, but we do offer a 16th inch thick, which gets you the same look. The thing that I tell people when they're asking this question is, you got to figure perception's reality, right?
Mhm.
So typically, if you're going to have a title belt and you have your champion in the ring wearing the title belt, he knows the belt doesn't weigh maybe as much as you think it should. The plates aren't as thick as maybe you thought they would be, but nobody else knows that.
Right.
One of the things we were just talking about Tom Brandy recently, right before we started recording. He was a wrestler that Salvatore Sincere that we worked with a lot, and he taught me a lot of things. But if you're in the ring and you screw up, you screwed up. Your opponent probably knows you screwed up, but most likely the audience doesn't know you screwed up.
Right.
So just keep going. So it's kind of the same thing. The belt's thinner, it doesn't weigh as much, but it looks really good, especially from 15 feet away when you're in the ring to the front row. So who's going to know other than you? So that's a good way that you can save a couple $100 right there.
And talk about like plating, right? Gold plating versus silver plating. How do these things impact? I mean, I would guess we're instantly jumping up $100, $200 or more. And also, of course, it comes back to the number of plates you have to put the gold plating on, the silver plating, etc.
Yeah, the gold plating definitely does cost more, but it's not that much more than you would think. Where you start getting into craziness is when you got like that jewel plating look where that's gold and silver on the same plate. That starts adding up. That takes a lot of work to do, so that can really increase the cost of a title belt. So that's something you want to avoid if you're trying to stay on a budget. We offer 4 different style belts. So we have like the standard premium style that we call it. The part I was just talking about with the thinner metal is our classic style belt. But then we have what's called our economy version and our victory version. So economy is our least expensive. It's a lot thinner metal. It's actually aluminum. The image it looks as though it's printed on. There's no dimension to the metal.
Right.
Again, it's custom. So, if you want your promotion's logo or name or anything custom can be put on those plates. And then the victory style is a little bit thicker. It's actually a laser engraved plastic plate. But again, like a lot of people hear, oh, plastic, I don't want a plastic belt. But again, unless you're holding it, you don't know that it's plastic. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's another way to save, and nobody's going to know unless you tell them. And
right. Unless you're handing the belt to fans.
Yes.
Right. They can't examine it up close.
It's kind of like, anything with wrestling, if you don't invite them into that part of it, they're never going to know. So that's another way to save money.
So we talked about the one end of the spectrum, a belt that might cost $5,000 or more if on the front end you got to do a lot of design work. Well, let's go down to the opposite end of the spectrum, right? So as anybody could see if they look at your website, the economy belts are a lot less expensive. We're talking about a smaller investment, and obviously there's a market for these things. I get asked that a lot about where can you go to get relatively inexpensive title belts. And of course, any title belt's an investment. But let's say I want to go to the extreme end. I only want 3 plates. I want something from like that economy line of belts that you do. Down there, what do you think is about the cheapest a belt could even be produced for? Like after which you're like, we're not even talking about the same thing. Let me go get the paper. Let me go get the rubber from the roofing, and I'm going to be making you one of those.
Right. Well, I get that question a lot too. So that's kind of why when we first started, we were just making the premium style belts, and we just offered $1,500 belts. But like you said, some people don't want a $1,500 belt. Some people, we do a lot of belts that have nothing to do with wrestling. Sometimes it's a fantasy football award or a gag gift even, you know what I mean? For like a dad or something like that.
Sure.
So they don't want to spend $1,500, but they will spend a couple hundred. So our economy belts, they start around the $400 range. And, kind of going back to your question is when people say, well, what can I get that's less expensive? Well, in the title belt world, you're going to get what you pay for. So yeah, you probably can find a belt for $100, $150, but when you get it, it's going to look like a belt for $100 or $150,
Right.
So our least expensive, because we have a lot of, we have to invest our time in producing it and designing it and things like that. So, we have certain overhead that we have to cover. So $400 is about the least expensive that we offer. It's going to get you a good quality product. It's a custom made design. It's not just, something, like a sticker.
It's not mass produced. It's not a toy.
No, nothing we make is mass produced. So
Right.
it's that's custom made for you, specifically for you. So that's what we offer on that end. Yeah.
And how do things like color affect the price? Like if I want color on the plates, or even if I want to go with a different color leather on the belt.
Well, the on our end, the classic and premium style, which are the engraved metal plates, the typical standard looking metal plates, those can include color of any sort. We can actually match PMS colors when you get more into like corporate belts that we do. If you have a specific color of your logo you want to match, we can do that. It doesn't really follow suit so much in wrestling, but that doesn't really affect the cost, other than that's included in the higher end belts. In the lower end belts, it's just not an option because they're priced the way they are. And there's a reason for that. And, we only have so much time that we can justify putting into it. So that's why it costs less, because color's not an option.
Gotcha. What do you think is the number one thing people do not understand about the price of championship title belts? Like, what's the thing? If we could just explain this one thing to everybody, you would get a lot less annoying emails every week.
I think, well, the fact that it's custom made, that they're all custom made from scratch, that is a big reason as to why it costs what it costs. But I think not so much the cost, but the biggest question, or the biggest problem, I guess, is the time involved to make these. It's not something that, because they're not mass produced, because everything's custom made to order, when you call me on Monday to get a belt made, first of all, we have multiple other orders going on. So we're not going to drop what we're doing to start on a new one because you need a belt in 2 weeks. If you need a belt in 2 weeks, I don't know that we're going to be able to help you. So, but there are ways, but that goes with the cost. You know what I mean? There's ways of rushing things through. There's obviously limitations that are involved. But I would say the time involved is more the question we get the most, more so than the cost. A lot of people want to throw money at it and be like, well, I'll pay you double if you can get it done this long.
Sure. But, don't you accept bribes?
Right. Yeah, I'll just put everyone else's on hold for you.
Right. Sorry, everybody else.
Yes. But that just doesn't work like that, because there's still the same processes that have to take place.
Yeah.
It just can't get done quicker. Even if we did put everything else on hold, there's things just take time. So that's more, the biggest issue isn't so much cost as it's time. So if you need it by X date, you need to give the manufacturer enough time to make it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Want to know even more about championship title belts? Then click on the video that's appearing on screen right now. That way you can keep on learning. Or click on that box with a letter P inside of it. It's going to take you to my Patreon page, where you can join our community and start unlocking nearly 800 exclusive posts all about pro wrestling.